Good. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the ODPP Café. It is Friday. We always have this show on Friday morning from 8 a.m. to 10. We welcome you to engage with us. It is a show that is meant to educate you and empower you on matters criminal justice system. We are on Facebook Live, so tag a friend, call a friend to watch and engage. We are also on Twitter at the ODPP_KE. We are on YouTube as well, and we invite you to subscribe to the ODPP page on YouTube. So my name is Anita Onuko. I'll be your host today. I have guests on the show. In a few minutes, I'm going to invite them to just introduce themselves. So as always, I am going to just give a sneak preview into the courts this week. Always not everything that happened because some of it is just, we just picked some highlights that we think we could talk about in the show. So join me as we start on the highlights of the week. So the first case we have today is on a Nairobi MCA who was charged with illegal possession of a firearm. Minority Whip Peter Imwatok was charged with illegally possessing a firearm. So State Prosecutor Winnie Mora presented testimonies from 6 witnesses which proved to the court that Imwatok has a case to answer. So this was a case of illegal possession of a firearm. The MCA is facing 4 counts of illegal possession of the firearm and ammunition and is set to answer to his case. The case will be mentioned on August 24th. So according to Section 2A of the Firearms Act 2012, if any person purchases, acquires, or has in his possession any firearm or ammunition without holding a firearm certificate in force at the time or otherwise than as authorized by a certificate, it's quite wordy, they commit an offense liable to imprisonment for a term of not less than 5 but not exceeding 10 years. Allow me to repeat that. So according to Section 2A of the Firearms Act 2012, if any person purchases, acquires, or has in his possession any firearm or ammunition without holding a firearm certificate in force at the time or otherwise than as authorized by a certificate, they commit an offense liable to imprisonment for a term of not less than 5 but not exceeding 10 years. So you can see the MCA clearly has a case to answer. The next case is quite interesting, and I think we've discussed this at some point. Deferred prosecution agreement for a cop accused of conning a colleague. So an AP officer who is accused of conning his colleague of 170,000 Kenya shillings in a fake recruitment deal has until August 16th to pay him or answer fraud charges at Kibera Law Courts. Vitalis Okodoi, attached to the Security of Government's Building SGB unit headquarters, is accused of obtaining money from Julius Kipchirchir of Langata Police Station, promising him a slot in the National Police Service for his son during the March recruitment. You see this happening a lot, especially during recruitment into the military and police force. People promise, you're conned really, you're told to pay for a slot. And then you find yourself in a funk because half the time it's a lie. So Mr. Okodoi is alleged to have received the money in different amounts on diverse dates between 23rd and 28th March this year. The prosecution allowed the two to settle the matter out of court. So, like I said, this is an interesting case. Deferred prosecution is a voluntary alternative to adjudication in which a prosecutor agrees to grant amnesty in exchange for the defendant agreeing to fulfill certain requirements. So in this case, Mr. Okodoi must pay 170K by 16th of August or face charges of fraud. He had better run, otherwise he faces the law for this one. Another case involving a police officer or the police force. A man pleads guilty to impersonating a police officer. A man is awaiting sentencing after pleading guilty to charges of impersonation and unlawful possession of government stores. So Joseph Rotich admitted before Senior Principal Magistrate Philip Mutu of Kibera Law Courts that he introduced himself as a police officer to police officers, how terrible is that, who found him with handcuffs. Clearly his 40 days had already, the fat lady sang for him in this case, because he introduced himself to police officers with handcuffs. So Rotich admitted that he had a pair of handcuffs belonging to the National Police Service with intent to defraud and claimed to the cops that he's a police officer attached to Mudangari Police Station. So the court will determine his fate on 11th of August. What a case. The next case, and I think the last one for today, and a third one for this matter, a man is in court for assaulting his 12-year-old daughter. He left her with a swollen face and was charged with subjecting her to cruel punishment. So Leonard Wafula is accused of subjecting the minor to cruelty on July 27th at his home in Kasarani, Nairobi. Quite sad. So Leonard is facing assault charges. He clearly, maybe punishing the daughter, he went overboard and of course hurt the child. He denied the charges before the senior principal magistrate Derek Kuto of Kibera Law Court. He was released on a 50,000 bond and an alternative cash bail of 20,000. The case will be mentioned on 18th of August. That's quite an unfortunate one. I mean, sometimes parents mete out punishment and this includes the stress they are going through in their other parts of their life. So we'll see how that case goes. So today we are to talk about transnational and organized crimes. And with me, I have two experts. I mean, this for me has been an exciting week when I was reading about this, because I never imagined that this transnational and organized crime would impact me as a common citizen. But clearly it does. So if you watched programs like Power, Locked Up, Blacklist, and if you're also a fan of The Godfather, and most recently The Godfather of Harlem, then you have just a glimpse of what transnational and organized crime looks like. So I want to introduce our guest because we want to discuss this at length and how it affects us as Kenyans, because geographically, the way we are situated, we are quite important to international trade. And of course, we are also very important to our neighbors. We are known as the haven of peace, the island of peace. But the blip of it is transnational and organized crime. So I want to give my guests just a few minutes to introduce themselves and tell us exactly who they are and what they do at the ODPP. I will start with my immediate. Karibu sana.
Thank you so much, Anita, and I appreciate and thank you for allowing me an opportunity to be part of this show today.
Yeah.
My name is Harrison Kerie. I'm a prosecutor attached to the Counterterrorism and Transnational Organized Crime Division. I've been a prosecutor for about 7 years now. I joined ODPP in 2014, in October. And I've been, I'm happy to be here today to discuss
TOC,
issues. Yes,
transnational and organized crime.
Correct.
I found it a mouthful, so I just needed to say TOC. Yeah.
Yeah,
Karibu sana Kiprop. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Anita.
Yes.
As you said, my name is Peter Kiprop. I'm a prosecutor, having worked here at the office of DPP for the last 14 years. I'm now the Assistant Director of Public Prosecutions in charge of TOC.
TOC, yes.
International, transnational, organized crime, and counterterrorism.
Wow.
Yeah.
So am I right in saying that it's like watching Godfather in real life now? Is that how your life is?
Not really.
Not really. This one is practical now.
Yeah.
We are dealing with real issues.
They're more exciting, I think.
Yeah. The other one is acting.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Do you watch them?
Yeah, we do. I have watched Power, and it's very interesting.
The Godfather of Harlem, at least I really watched it.
I'm not a fan of movies, but
Serious, it's actually serious.
yeah, I don't think, okay, I wouldn't say I don't have time, but I'm not a fan.
You're not a fan of them. Okay.
No.
Just try and watch. They're quite interesting. So anyway, thank you so much for coming to the show. Like I said, for me, this has been a very exciting week because I didn't imagine that a topic like transnational and organized crime would have an impact on me as a citizen of this country. But then this show, like I said earlier, is about educating people and informing them. So we go almost classroom by just defining a few terms.
Yes.
So for us today, I need us to define what transnational crime is. And do we have to say transnational and organized crime, or do we break it down as transnational first and organized?
Anita, thank you. Let's break it down so that for our viewers to get it simply, without using the legal jargon and technical terms.
Yeah, legalism.
Yes.
Yeah.
So transnational crime, a crime that transits countries. The way the word is used, trans. So it violates laws of more than one country. Okay. A crime could be planned in one country, but
And
executed in another country. So it becomes a transnational crime.
Okay.
Okay. Now, organized crime is now the enterprise. Who are these people who are planning? It's the network.
Okay.
Yes. So they plan and then execute. So they are now the organized group.
Okay.
Yes.
So it is transnational and organized
Yes.
crime.
Yes. So the crime is transiting, but we are planning.
You're planning, so
Yes,
you're
so
organizing.
organizing.
Ah, okay.
Yes.
So maybe, Kiari, just tell us, what are some of these crimes that are associated with TOC?
Okay.
And bring them home.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
So, as Mr. Kiprop here has indicated, is that these are crimes that cut across nations, and there are so many of them. But basically, for our viewers, and to make it simple, one of the crimes that we have under transnational organized crime is the drug trafficking.
Okay.
We have human trafficking, we have wildlife trafficking, we have terrorism. Not forgetting others like money laundering, racketeering, such kind of offenses. So those are the offenses that we look at broadly in terms of what entails transnational organized crimes. So yeah, that is it. Drug trafficking, we know what it is.
Yes.
Dealing with the drugs, whether here or outside the Kenya, whether they're coming or leaving. You know, trafficking is that process of possession, movement, conveying, dealing.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm wondering, this just came to me. When we see a house help mistreated in Saudi Arabia, for example, or these UAE countries,
yes,
do they qualify as a transnational?
It depends. You see, first of all, it depends how they got themselves into those countries. There are obviously legitimate means where people apply for jobs. We have accredited agencies who take them there. They get good employers. They do their jobs. But again, we have situations where people are trafficked. And when I say trafficked, they go there either sometimes with their consent or no consent. But again, there are elements of fraud or deception. Okay. So that once they get there, the jobs that they are going to find there is not the jobs that they were promised. You know, you'll find some people being taken to brothels. They are sexually exploited. So those are some of the instances that now those cases become trafficking or part of transnational organized crimes. And for this case, human trafficking. Okay. Yes.
I know because there's a time it was trending a lot on social media.
Yeah.
And you saw people calling on the DPP to say something, to act.
Yes.
So at what point can the DPP speak to such stories? Because sometimes you see a house help has gone quite okay.
Yes.
From an agency into UAE, and then now they are assaulted, then they're killed.
Yes.
So does the DPP, do you classify this as part of what you do in this department?
Oh yes. First of all, note that in Kenya we have a transnational organized crime unit, which is set up within the office of the DCI. It's
the investigative arm.
Yes, an investigative arm, which is also a multi-agency team, meaning that we have persons from different agencies coming up together to investigate and eventually prosecute these people. So what happens is that the DPP under Article 157, Part 4, may require the Inspector General of Police, now under who we have now the TOCU, the Transnational Organized Crime Unit, may do them a letter and require them to investigate any allegations of mistreatment or human trafficking or suspected human trafficking of a Kenyan in another country, or even within, or even of another person who has transited through Kenya or is, alleging to be mistreated here in Kenya. So the DPP under 157.4 has that authority to request the IG conduct investigations. Okay. So yes, we have a very big part and role that we play in this.
In such cases.
Yes.
Okay. So then, if somebody, sorry, just to clear this. So if there's a case that comes from say UAE.
Yes.
So the first stop should be the TOCU.
Yes, yeah, they are the units that it's the unit that is mandated to investigate these crimes. Yeah. After investigations, they forward files to the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution. Okay. Now under Mr. Kiprop's guidance and leadership, then I mean, a decision is made on whether or not to prosecute or whether further investigation should be done.
Okay.
Yes.
So yeah, Mr. Kiprop, I keep saying that this, I found out that TOC affects me as a Kenyan citizen. So maybe the first question I'd ask is, what level of threat does it pose to the citizens?
Yeah, thank you, Anita. You see, these crimes revolve on one big elephant in the room: corruption.
Yes.
Corruption feeds all these other crime.
Yes.
And to a large extent, then it affects the economy.
Yes.
Because when terrorism, for example, affects our country, it affects our economy. And corruption then feeds them.
Yes.
So definitely it will affect you, because living standards will be expensive. And you see, once that has happened, definitely the common mwananchi will feel that there is no peace, your business are not picking, and the economy is going down. So it will affect you.
But in the manner in which you describe transnational and organized crime, it feels as though it doesn't affect me as a commoner. It is a crime that is done by the high and mighty, and so it is just for them. Why should they care that the DPP has a team department?
Let me give you a good example.
Yeah.
Around 2012 towards 2013, 13 and 14 we had piracy cases in the high seas.
Yes.
And we had an MOU with most of the European countries that we prosecute those cases. What had happened is that the goods which were being shipped were becoming now very expensive for the shippers to ship those goods from one country to another. By the time the goods reach Mombasa, for example, the insurance premiums have gone up. Those goods are meant for you. They are meant for this country. But you see, because the premiums have gone up, definitely it will be expensive on your part as common mwananchi. The oil, for example,
Yes.
is a driver of the economy. By the time it reaches this country, because of the piracy, it was very high. So you see how it affects you.
Yes.
Yeah.
When you mention goods, it means, I think I also read somewhere that counterfeit goods are part of.
Yeah.
Yes, counterfeiting.
The biggest.
Lakini zimejaa.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying, Anita.
Yeah.
Corruption is the biggest element in the room. It feeds all these other crimes.
Yeah.
You see, when goods come from one country to another, they are supposed to pass through some checks, pass through some standards.
Yes.
But you see, when those standards are compromised, we look the other way and let the goods pass. And it finds themselves in the market.
Yeah.
That's how you find that there are goods which are very substandard in our
They're
market, and you wonder how.
substandard,
Yes. And it's all over the world.
That's such a web. I mean, how do you get to the heart of
That's
it?
why it's now transnational crime.
And
It translates.
Okay. So when
And maybe to add on that, Anita, you see, when you ask how it affects you as an individual, let's talk of, for example, terrorism. What does terrorism do? What has it done to us in the past?
Yeah.
You see, the international community will obviously shiver. They wouldn't want to come to Kenya to invest, and we will not also have tourism. Tourism industry will go down.
Yeah.
There will be no tourists from other countries, even locally. Because if you know Mombasa and Nairobi are hotspots, you can't leave your very comfortable Murang'a home to come to Nairobi or go to Mombasa for a vacation or to a mall. So in a way, it impacts negatively on the economy of the country. And eventually, people who are employed in some of these institutions or hotels lose their jobs.
They lose their job.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So when we say the world is flat because of globalization, and then now we're talking about transnational crime that transcends borders, has it made it worse?
Yes.
Globalization is meant to be a good thing.
It has the positive and the negative side.
Yeah.
Positively, globalization has made, for example, traveling very easy. You can travel from one country to another. You can look for a job. You can look for education, and you can improve yourself because technology is here. You can get better standards from other countries. No.
Yeah.
But now those people who are traveling from one country to another, looking for jobs in quotes, education in quotes, most of them are not honest. They are exporting their criminality to other countries. Yes.
Yeah.
And reaching there now, because of the flat globalization, You see, countries have, they expect that when you come here, you are coming to improve one or two issues within the country. But now, you become a criminal and you are a foreigner. You see, you are exporting criminality during globalization.
Yes, and again, to add on to that, you see two things here. You know, you look at it as a good thing, and also, as Mr. Kiprop says here, as also a threat. Good thing, meaning that, like, right now, you can order phone from China. It gets here like in 7 days. It's a good thing. You know, you can travel, you can make, you know, you can do business, you know, internet and everything else. But at the same time, bad guys have used this to exploit us. They have used cyber. I mean, they have used internet. They have taken advantage of globalization to exploit us. You know, to attack us, to plan and execute these attacks, to bring in goods that are counterfeit and services, to bring in bad people because of obviously porous borders and so on and so forth. But again, look at it also in this perspective. Law enforcement agencies have also utilized globalization in terms of advancing the investigations, right? So that, I mean, if it is in terms of communication, I know very well that there is a way I can catch you. I don't need to come to where you are, but I know I can catch you doing a bad thing or about to do a bad thing. So it is a good thing, generally speaking, but a few people are using it
for the bad. Just
things.
speak a bit about interagency collaboration then, because you just mentioned it. So you work with other agencies?
Yes. Locally, yes, we have, including the ODPP has embraced interagency so much. We have multi-agency task forces that have been established to deal with the particular crimes. And the good thing is that when you see together as, you know, various organizations, you're able to understand each other. So that investigations become easy, prosecution become easy. And finally, it is easy to get justice. Because remember, I'm seated with you here. Let's say you are from KRA. You're able to share with me information that Mr. Kiprop here is evading tax. So it is easier for us now, instead of doing letters, you know, waiting for 3 months reply, we are able to do things in real time and a bit faster and effectively. Yes. In terms of partnering with the international community, yes, again, the country and by extension our ODPP has been able to partner with other countries in making sure that prosecution of our matters are efficient and effective. We have MLAs that we do with the various countries. We have MOUs that we have entered. You know, there is that understanding and quick responses to our issues.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So, Mr. Kiprop, you mentioned corruption. And for me, when I was reading about this, it felt like this is where corruption happens, like mega, because the amount of money you need to move a crime from country A to country B must be too much. So maybe we speak a bit about this corruption. You used to imagine that corruption is zile za karao za 50 bob. Until when you discover there's mad corruption going on here. And then, of course, this affects our governance standards. So just a bit about the link between TOC and corruption. And of course, now then, what is the ODPP doing to mitigate this? Because one of those things that the ODPP is very passionate about is the war against graft. So how do we do this in this area?
Yes, thank you, Anita. The way you just put it, corruption is the in thing in this transnational crime. The way you are saying, globalization has enabled goods to move all over the world. Technology has aided all this. But for counterfeit goods, for example, to move, for wildlife products to move, corruption must have happened, and it is mega corruption. You find, for example, a container exporting ivory. And there are some checks and counter checks that has to go through for verification of that container that the goods that they are carrying are legitimate. But then because of corruption, you know, somebody looks the other side and lets the container pass. Okay? Counterfeit goods come to this country or goes out of this country, yet there are some checks and balances that have been put in place to make sure that they are standard. But because corruption, you see, aids them.
You like investigated or researched as to why this person looks the other way? Is it lack of patriotism? Is it poverty? What makes this person know that an appetite has small arms?
That one is difficult. Someone, to make it legitimate.
Wash.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like we normally say wash.
The common
The
word.
common one.
Yeah, the common word.
Yeah.
So you can see how then it still calls we are called upon as a people to look inwards. Because last week we were talking about hate speech and electoral justice.
Yes.
And the bottom line was it's not about institutions, it's not about laws,
Correct.
it's just about us.
Yes.
So what makes it different? Why can't people just, especially in the hiring of these people, is an integrity test applied? Like, do you have to pass an integrity test to be given the role of, I don't know what they do, those people at the borders or those people do these checks. Is an integrity test applied?
I think you can pass through the test of integrity
But still,
from day one.
Yeah.
But you see, along the way you change. You are influenced by your colleague. You are influenced by other factors.
Yeah.
But at the time of entry, you are okay. So there are so many factors that influence that.
Yeah.
The important thing is for us to know that this is our country. We want to make sure that what we consume as a country are goods that are legitimate, and we build our economy. Otherwise, the way it is, this corruption and TOC definitely affects our economy, and we'll struggle for a long time.
We'll struggle until we realize it's upon us.
Yeah.
So what are some of the things that ODPP has put in place for TOC, to combat TOC?
As I said earlier, Anita, is that there is formation of multi-agency teams. And this multi-agency teams is informed by the fact that these crimes are difficult to investigate and prosecute, because most of these transnational organized crimes are committed in a clandestine way, planned and executed in a secretive way. You see how it is done. So the ODPP has tried to encourage that multi-agency teamwork. It has also tried to empower, like you see, we say this is a special division. Prosecutors in the divisions are extensively trained. There is a lot of building of capacity for prosecutors in the division, so they get to understand the nature of these offenses, how to investigate and how to prosecute them effectively in court. So the ODPP has employed a number of measures, including cooperation, both locally and internationally. So this way, because we are saying most of the time they cut across countries, you are able to understand the legal regime of that country. You're able to meet and discuss how you can help us and investigate and prosecute, how we can help those other countries investigate and prosecute, because eventually their problems also is our problem. Yes. Remember that. Yeah. So the ODPP has really put a lot of emphasis on this collaboration. Yes.
Yeah, to add on that, Anita, you see, the office has a policy of having prosecutors to guide investigators, prosecution-led investigation. I mean, guided investigation, not led, guided investigation, so that.
What's the difference?
No, we don't lead. Leading investigation means you are part of the investigation team.
Yeah.
Okay.
But guiding means you are giving advice.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. So the prosecutor is in touch with that investigation from day one. And therefore, by the time the investigation is completed, you are good to go. You understand the history of the case, and you have all the material that you need to prosecute that case. So the ODPP, the way Mr. Kieri has said, partnership is very important through multi-agency. So because these crimes are done secretly, intelligence sharing is very important. Okay. So we get some information which assists us now to use to investigate and get the evidence that we want to prosecute some of these cases. Information, because these offences are done secretly, and when you look at some of those offences, you may not know even who planned it. It's very difficult. So without intelligence, sometimes very difficult.
Okay.
And this is more so the terrorism offenses. You never get to know all the players. And again, as Mr. Kiprop says, when you get this intelligence, you are able to use it in various ways. And one of the ways is not just to prosecute, remember, our work is also to make sure that there is justice.
Yes.
And we have alternatives to prosecution, as we had earlier on discussed. So you find that for us, like terrorism, we do not wait for boom to investigate and prosecute. So our mandate is also to complement and help these investigative agencies, you know, in other disruption methods. They detect, you know, then they disrupt and dismantle this terrorist network, for example. So one way of disrupting is you can get people, arrest people who, you know, are crossing, coming to the country, who are suspected, or there is intelligence information that they are coming to commit offenses, or they are, you know, they are connected to some of these offenses. Now, we do not have enough evidence for prosecuting these guys. What do we do? They are arrested, for example, they are taken back to their countries if they're not Kenyans, or if it is a young boy, for example, young men or young persons, and we think that it's because of age they've gotten into this bad habits. We have various programs that the government has set up, like the National Counterterrorism Center, where we can always recommend that they go there for a de-radicalization program. So ODPP is really very keen in this, and especially in making sure that it doesn't happen. That is why we say Prevention of Terrorism Act. That's our law in terrorism.
Yes.
So we don't wait for it to happen, but our work is to make sure that we prevent in as much as we can.
Okay, interesting. So every time in this, whenever we talk about topics here, we must talk about the decision to charge.
Yes.
And the question for this one is different. It's when a crime occurs in Kenya by a national from country B, who makes the decision to charge? Is it where the person originated from? Is it where the crime took place?
Thank you. Anita, it depends. Sometimes crime happen in Kenya, but it was planned in another country. So decision to charge then is made in this country, that we charge these people because they have committed a crime here. Okay? Yeah. But then, because of the multi-agency cooperation, MLA, we can extradite these people to be prosecuted in the country where they planned it, because that is where the menstrual originated from.
Okay.
So, and it has happened before. People, you know about the Acacia case, they were extradited to another country.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I can be a Kenyan, I've committed a crime here. No, I've countries, or
it's a treaty.
Yeah.
It's a treaty.
Those are treaties.
Okay.
They're international instruments that you enter into and ratify. That whenever we have these offenses, this is how we operate on an international platform.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I watched, I think, on TV sometime last week or the other week about a Canadian national who was found guilty in a Chinese court, I think, for espionage or something.
Yes.
So the Canadians wanted him taken back to Canada to serve his prison sentence.
Yes.
So then what came to mind was, what happens to these cases you've seen of students in China who were trafficking drugs, they were found in China, and they are there in jail? Is there not a way to bring them back home to serve their sentence?
You see, allow me to say this, Anita. You see, ordinarily, where you are tried is where you are going to serve your sentence from. Tried and convicted.
Yeah.
That's a general rule.
So you can't go say, oh, shit,
No,
our 18-year-olds, just bring him back to finish his
no,
Kenya.
No. I mean, where you are tried and convicted, you serve your sentence there. You know, unless after serving that sentence, that other country or the country of origin of this suspect, I mean, he had committed an offense there, and therefore he needs to go back and be tried or serve a sentence that he had escaped. in that other country. So that's the general rule, that
Yeah.
you serve the sentence where you are
So what does
tried
the
and
treaty
convicted.
cover then?
Anita, the only exception to
Yeah.
what Mr. Kerry is saying, and he is right, the only exception is when we exchange prisoners.
Yes.
If you have prisoners in your country which belong to my country, and I have prisoners in my country which belong to your country, we can now enter into some MOU and say, give me my people, I give me yours.
So this
Otherwise you serve. You
Yes.
see, the way I was telling you about piracy cases,
Yeah.
we prosecuted a lot of Somali people in Mombasa because we had an MOU with most of the Western countries. They are serving in our jails. Yes. But because we don't have an MOU with Somalia, because of the nature of the state at the moment, we can't expect them to Somalia. They have to serve. Yeah. Yes.
So do you have I feel like now do you do sensitization campaigns for this? There's a very vulnerable age, the one that thinks they can get rich quickly and get involved with terrorism and on drugs and human trafficking. Does the ODPP have sensitization campaigns for this group? Because they don't know. I assume as an 18-year-old, a campus student, if you give me some drugs nifikishe China nikishikwa, then it is easy for me to just go on social and cry and say, Jeni munichukue munirudishe home.
Anita,
Yeah.
yes, ODPP, there are some programs which are being run to sensitize people about terrorism and the consequences of joining those organizations, criminal organizations. I remember at some point in Mombasa, we had an outreach where we were going to institutions and educating people that, look, as much as there is this, they sell you a narrative that you are going to Somalia, there is some job, and then they describe a job, and then they give you some money because they take advantage of the poverty levels.
Yes.
But then they are recruiting you to a criminal organization. So we had some outreach that we were conducting in Mombasa, telling a counter narrative, kind of de-radicalization of most of the young people. Because they finish school, they need jobs, they are idle, then they find themselves, they are vulnerable. Okay? So there are some programs which we reach out to the community and say, look, these are not the good thing to get yourself into. Yeah.
And mostly run also by the National Counterterrorism Center as the agency which has been mandated to carry out this de-radicalization program. And I remember also in Isiolo we have some NGOs also who set up some kind of formations for women whose children had disappeared to Somalia. So there is that kind of sensitizing these women. What do you need to do to your kids, educating them, or let us know in case something changes, they drop out of schools and so on and so forth. Report to us when they disappear. This kind of sensitization, letting the public know that you are part of them and you want to help them so that their children do not get exposed to this kind of terror networks or criminal networks.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Interesting. So we are in an election period. You're talking about corruption.
Yes.
Transnational organ. Are you worried that are you watching this space now because TOC looks for institutions to capture so that they can be able to operate freely? Are you watching the election, the campaigns as they go? Did you get involved, or you wait until now investigations are done?
The way Mr. Kerry was saying, we don't wait for the boom.
No.
Yeah, the act, the way it is framed, is to prevent the crime.
Yeah.
So our security agencies and the criminal justice system are actually watching. Yeah. If you look at the criminology around the world, most of these criminal elements want to penetrate the political arena.
The institutions.
The institutions.
Yes.
Because when they are there, they can negotiate now for space and power.
They can have a voice.
Yes.
Is that not what has happened, say, in West Africa, for example?
Yes. Boko Haram.
Yes.
For example. What they do, they kidnap students or group of people, then they use them as hostages to negotiate for ransoms and space in governments.
Yes.
And sometimes you hear some nations want to negotiate with such organizational crimes because
Please tell me you are not one of those nations.
no, I'm saying so because
Yeah.
I heard one of the nations was saying, look, this terror organization is now becoming a serious threat, not only to our people but also to stability of the government.
Yes.
Can we speak with them? And it's an issue which is still being debated, whether you can speak with a terrorist organization without compromising your security, and when you speak with them, it looks like you are legitimizing them.
Exactly.
And becomes a problem.
Well, when I was blacklist, that's a series.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but then, when like in African countries, for example, you find a drug lord chasing for a political seat. Is there a way you can stop these people from running, for example, for elected positions? Is there a law?
Yes.
Is it
Ethics and
enforced?
Anti-Corruption Act
Yeah.
requires that you've seen the way before elections are done, they are required to pass through some ethical vetting, ethical standards. They fill some form that their integrity is intact. So they are vetted.
So you can just tick a box and say my integrity is
they are vetted.
intact.
Yeah,
But
no, remember. Yeah, sorry.
So,
Yeah,
but once you submit that form, the agency has a duty to check the background of that person, to verify that. Yeah.
Is that not a worry? Like, I would worry, and I'm not even part of the TSC department. I would worry around this time of elections that these people may now want to get into positions of power, and then we are done.
All over the world, that's what they do. The moment you accumulate wealth illegally or using some dubious means, the only safe place all over the world is to get into politics, get into power, so that you are able to protect
and control what you've acquired illegally.
Yeah.
Yes, unfortunately, that's the situation. Unfortunately, but now the question that you are asking, it's the question of ethics and integrity. If you pass these two tests, it means you're clean. So, but then if you don't, it means you are not supposed to be cleared to vie for those positions. And that's why when you see the DPP always is very strict about some of these integrity issues. It's because people come and to take care of the illegal acquisition of
interesting.
And yesterday, I think DPP and other agencies like EACC, they had a talk on clearing of some of these candidates who either are under investigations or people who have been charged in court, and so on and so forth. And now there is a serious debate, and I remember DPP yesterday on television saying that maybe we need to relook into the constitution and our laws generally, so that it is not only when you are convicted that you are barred from vying for a political seat, but even when active investigations are being carried out, or when you've been charged in court. I know there is a presumption of innocence. It's a very fundamental principle. A right of an accused person, but at the same time, remember that you've been accused of so many things. So the only thing that you can do is to give room for investigation to get concluded, so that if you are cleared, you can come back and vie. But now
it speaks so heavily to our value system.
Yes.
So lazima tena uambiwe ungoje, you know.
When you look at the Western world, whenever an integrity issue is raised on your character, yes, the governor
stepped aside.
Stepped aside.
And when I was listening to him, he kept saying, "I take full responsibility."
Yes. Exactly. He owned the responsibility.
And he's still accused by the he hasn't even taken to court.
Yes,
that is it.
Yes.
So is it
the fidelity? The fidelity. The standards are very high.
Yeah. It's just the respect of the rule of law. You know, do you respect the rule of law? If you do, that's the right thing for you to do.
Wow.
Yeah.
So if Anita as a voter is unable to make the decision whether to vote in Kiprop, who is under investigations, then we need the law to say, Anita, as much as you like that Kiprop needs to lead you, we are saying he cannot run. So is that what you're saying? That laws ought to be in place to stop these people from...
Yeah, I will say so, because remember, it's not only when you have integrity issues, doesn't mean that you've been convicted. There could be so many other issues that you've been dealing with that are not right, though that are questioning your integrity to run for a political seat. And that is what the EACC is trying to address. I mean, how can we stop, or how can we make sure that you are not accused of these things? So yeah, that's what we are saying.
There's an approach I think I saw in one of the strategies that the ODPP has, follow the money approach.
Yeah.
Then I asked myself, because me, I'm asking questions as a Mwananchi. Remember, I'm not. And I stand guided and corrected. When you say follow the money, do you start following it after prosecution, after someone has been found guilty, or is this now where you employ the prosecution guided investigation? Because again, the political bit is on. We can't avoid talking about it. So when they say that for a presidential candidate, you can spend 4 billion to campaign, do you get curious as a team and say, because you know that then money laundering comes, you know, drugs, and people do high-level trade, so they have this money to campaign. Do you, and I'm asking just for the Mwananchi, not because or anything, but do you now look at these things and wonder, this guy is running for president, means he needs 4 billion, we need to start checking where he's getting his money. Do we do that?
Okay.
Just go.
Now, I think you know, this thing is quite emotive at the moment.
Yes, it is.
And you find that the IEBC has been accused of approving budgets that are excessive. And number two, they're also being accused by these political persons who are vying for seats of curtailing or putting a ceiling on how much they can spend. Remember, the Political Parties Act and the IEBC and other laws have put in place measures. For example, you cannot get funding from a particular person. I mean, is it more than 30% from one person? And that is for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
So that once you win that seat, you do not now come and control, or you want now to get tenders to recover your money because you funded somebody, you see?
Yeah.
So there are measures that have been put in place, only that people are, you know, people are cheeky and they will always try to circumvent the law.
Yeah, again, Anita, aside from politics, we follow the money in all the other cases that we prosecute in courts.
Yes.
Whenever somebody has been charged with corruption and there is evidence that he corruptly received some money and
money laundering was involved.
Yes, was involved. That money is followed, and there is an agency called Asset and Recovery Agency.
Yes.
Even without waiting for the conviction, for the prosecution to conclude their case, they file their applications alongside the prosecution and they recover the money.
So by the time part of ODPP, it's a whole different agency.
It's a different agency.
Okay.
But of course, we also have our own, where we can even enter into a plea bargain. For I remember there are some institutions which agreed to enter into plea bargain and return the money.
Okay.
Yes, and that's why we have a fund within the office. When that money comes, we put that money in that prosecution fund.
Okay.
Yes.
You've just actually jumped to my next question. Are there alternative justice?
Just before you go into that, to add on to what Mr. Kiprop is saying, is that in the previously we've not been able, we were not prosecuting money laundering. We were not really following the money previously.
All right.
But now, you know, the system has changed. The perception has changed. The way of doing things has changed. So that if, for example, somebody is accused of corruption, terrorism, and any other, these offenses here we are talking about, and there are assets involved, you know, because of the multi-agency setup, you bring in the ARA to look into, you know, to follow the asset as you prosecute, so that at the end of the prosecution, if there is something that you need to forfeit or to recover, conviction-based, whatever, forfeiture, then you can do it at that point. You can follow that money, and that money is returned back to the state and is able to be put into useful, whatever. So that is what we do.
Okay.
Yeah.
So plea bargain, all those things, do they apply here,
Yes,
like you're saying?
They do.
To what extent?
To
Is there an exception? Is there an exception?
The only exemption is what is provided under the Criminal Procedure Code, Section 137. I think 137N. You cannot plea bargain on sexual offenses, war crimes, genocide, and crimes against humanity.
Drugs, selling drugs.
We plea bargain.
You can.
Yes.
We
can.
No, but it is a crime against humanity.
Yes.
No, but you can.
You can. Those are the only exceptions. You find somebody has been charged with the offense of drugs, around 5, 6 counts.
Yeah.
If somebody wants to say plea bargain and plead guilty to 3 counts, and those are the major counts in your charge sheet, why not?
Yeah.
Terrorism?
Yes.
Yes.
Those are crimes against
Yeah,
humanity.
the beauty about Anita, the beauty
In
about plea
English.
bargain,
Yeah.
the beauty about plea bargain
Yeah.
is that it must result into a conviction. That is the beauty about it.
It must.
Somebody must plead guilty. Yes.
Okay. Diversion, does it apply?
And remember, before you go to diversion, remember we are preventing, and one of the ways of preventing this is to disrupt this network.
Yeah.
It is to dismantle the networks. And sometimes when you plea bargain with these bad guys, they're able to share with you information, which information you can use, you can put into very good use and disrupt very big networks. So you look at the bigger picture.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Does diversion apply?
Yeah, it does. It does.
Really?
Yes. Drugs. Let me give you an example.
Please. As I look onto my
Yes.
just continue.
Drug menace is a big problem in this country, especially in the coast region.
Yeah.
And there are people who have become so dependent in drugs to an extent that when you arrest them, you feel there are people who need more treatment and rehabilitation more than the trial prosecution. So sometimes because they are just consumers, you don't have to prosecute them. Refer them to rehabilitation centers for treatment and rebuild their lives.
Yeah.
So we divert some of those cases. Recently, last week, there's somebody who had been arrested for possession of drugs for consumption, small time consumers. At the time of arrest, he could not even stand. He was so weak because he had missed the doses. But he changed plea recently and pleaded guilty. In his mitigation, he was thanking the police and the prisons for having arrested him. Because now he has recovered. You see?
Yeah.
So, because that mitigation for me, it was powerful because I think this person it's a way of being diverted from the menace that he was in.
Yeah.
Now he has now recovered. Yeah.
You have
So
a lot of
I'm
those.
waiting.
Those are interesting stories.
I'm waiting for the sentence because even the court was moved. This guy now looks okay, and he was saying, "I thank you so much for having arrested me because I would have died right now."
Wow.
Yeah, and remember our diversion policy and guidelines address more on young offenders, kids, children in conflict with the law. I remember a while back, Mr. Kiprop, we had a school bus which had students who were smoking cannabis, who had alcohol, like though in a number, it was a minibus. Embu, somewhere along those areas. So you can imagine if you took these kids to court, what are you doing? You are sending them, they are going to interact with the bad guys in prison. So what is the best thing that you can do? Divert. Have them spoken to. Let them not have a criminal record. They're students, they are young, they don't know, it's a stage. So that is why some of these alternatives are there to address such issues.
But mkona kazi because now children are more exposed than before. I don't know why. But then how has social media changed how you work in this department? Are you seeing more? Are you monitoring people on social to know what they're saying? Are you Big Brother?
Maybe the investigative agencies. Ours, whenever we see something, and the office of DPP under the article on 157, we direct the IG to investigate.
Oh, okay. So I'm wondering again, some of the penalties in these cases, like drugs. What is the highest penalty? Is it right to say the highest penalty?
Yes, you can ask. The highest is life. It's life.
Okay.
Yes, and of course, the law says 3 times the value of the drugs. Yes.
For the fine.
For the fine.
And you see, the court can say life and
on top of that,
on top of that fine.
Not sure.
And the same thing happens to terrorism cases. The maximum penalty we have is life imprisonment, and these other fines not more than 30 years in prison.
Yes. So they are quite,
lifetime.
yeah, those are quite serious offenses.
Yeah.
So even if you are given 30 years and you are somebody mid-30s, 40s, because those are active people,
Yeah.
I mean, you'll just rot in jail.
In human trafficking, we have 30 million, we have 30 years
Yes.
in jail. Yeah.
There are quite serious penalties for these offenses because remember the impact they cause in the society is quite huge. So
Yeah, that's what I'm
It-
saying.
it's
They're
a
all
form of-
crimes against humanity.
yes, as a form of deterrence,
Yeah.
the penalty must be
Must
so
be
harsh.
very high,
Yes,
okay,
yes,
and harsh.
Yeah.
Okay, so in dealing with things like terrorism, have we found the link between terrorism and, say, poverty, religion?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. You see, Anita, as Mr. Kiprop was saying earlier, first of all, we talk of corruption. Secondly, we have other factors, and other factors in this case will include poverty. Why poverty? Because the poor are more vulnerable to deception by these bad guys.
Yeah.
So if you are poor and somebody comes to you, for example, you don't have good education, you are poor. Somebody tells you, come help me do something, carry this luggage for me, it's an explosive, take to point A or point B, or watch something here, I mean, give me this information. So with time, you get recruited into the system. Why? Because you are poor, you are vulnerable. You can do something for 5,000 shillings or less, just to put a meal on your table. Yeah, you see? When you talk of religion, yes, and not only religion. We are saying religion is good, but we have extremists. These extremists, what they do is to, to spread propagandas. We had the other day a Christian attacking a mosque in New Zealand. Those are extremists. We also have other religion, Buddhists, Muslims, those who have extreme, they go to the extreme. They do not teach the religion, but they use the religion to, to brainwash people, to spread propaganda, to tell people how the government of the day is not, doing things in their favor. They have been, they have been undermined. They've been oppressed. These propagandas. They use the propaganda. They use religion, and religion is good, but they use it in a bad way.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, interesting. So now that you're actually here, what is counterterrorism? We missed our show on counterterrorism. So what is counterterrorism? And how does it differ from what now? Or is it part of TOC?
No, it is part of TOC. It is part of TOC, and counterterrorism are measures that have been put in place to prevent the occurrence of these terrorist acts. To counter, and that is what we told you before. How do we do prevention? How do we do this?
It's not waiting for boom. And
no,
then
we don't wait for boom. We always operate on the left of boom, not right of boom. So
is terrorism does it just manifest in booms and killing of civilians, or is it?
Not necessarily. Remember, it's the use of doing an act or acts or which can amount to threat. If you feel threatened, that can amount to an act of terrorism. If you you do this with with the intention of intimidating people.
Yeah.
You want to make the government of the day or a regime to do something or to refrain from doing something. Say, look at Somalia, look at what the Al-Shabaab was doing to us or has been doing to us. We are attacking you because your army is here, you are killing our women and kids.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a way of, doesn't always result to death or destruction of property or injury, but also disruption. Look at the way they destroy communication mass. Look at the way they spread fear.
Yes.
What happens? We do not have terrorism coming to our country. So it goes so much into spreading propaganda and fear among the citizens and the government of the day.
Yeah.
And therefore destabilizing the national security and regional security, the health and safety of the citizens. Yeah.
And is cyber terrorism something we should be worried about in this country, or we are not there yet?
We are there. Globalization.
So
much. Globalization. We are there, Anita.
Yeah.
Technology is almost everywhere now. And you see, we are embracing technology every day.
Yeah.
And things change every day. So the criminals, unfortunately, sometimes are ahead of the law.
Yeah.
Most of the time.
Yeah, most of the time, they're ahead of the law.
Yeah.
Actually, the law comes to cure
Yeah.
the lacunas that the terrorists have identified and exploited. So we are there. Cybercrime is real. You see the way terrorists and criminal networks disrupt elections of other countries.
Yeah.
They spread fear. They send viruses to disrupt
Yes.
maybe military data.
Yeah.
Those kind of things. And they destabilize a lot.
So is cyberterrorism just about internet?
Yeah, and use of computer,
just-
use of mobile
Oh,
phones,
mobile
you know.
phones. Yes.
Yeah, it's just about internet and computers,
Yes.
you know.
So it has really changed how things are.
Yes,
Definitely.
and it might move away from the boom, from
Yes.
We are moving clearly
from
from
the gun,
boom
from the
Yes,
gun.
and gun.
yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
to technology, the
Yeah.
war on technology.
Yeah.
Yes,
But we still have a small arms problem
yes.
in this country.
Yes.
Is it the continent or the country?
I would say the world,
In the world.
all over the world.
Yeah.
Arms is is still a problem.
Yeah.
To speak about our country, you see the way the porous nature of our borders. Those arms infiltrate our neighboring countries because of their instability. It's a good ground for guns to come in, and you find places like those cattle rustling areas. They have those small arms, and they use a lot of those arms to again commit other offenses like cattle rustling.
Yeah.
Yet the arms itself is an offense for having come to this country illegally.
It is, yeah.
So we have a problem with small arms.
Yeah.
And that's why you see once in a while the security agencies, the government round up those small arms and they ban them because they're illegal.
Maybe you should do the wall like Trump's wall.
Yeah.
Around our borders to protect ourselves.
Yeah, Anita, you see, just to add on to what Mr.
Yeah.
Kiprop is saying,
Yeah.
you see, these offenses, like, you know, when we have the influx of, you know, arms coming in, illegal arms, you see cattle rustling, you see people using this to commit robberies here and there. So the long term of this TOC, or transnational organized crime, is that it affects the social fabric. Why? You steal my cattle, I don't have income. So I'm not empowered economically. What do? I become vulnerable. The government doesn't get income, doesn't get taxes. So when you look at it from a long-term point of view, we get so much affected to the extent that an individual, a person down on the ground, also feels
Gets
the impact.
affected, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when you mention transnational and organized crime,
Yes.
I honestly can't see how it touches me.
Yeah.
Until now you interact with these stories, you're
Yes.
like,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
okay, yeah. So I think there's someone on just on Facebook. Someone says, great stuff, Bwana Peter Kiprop, Kosgei. Someone has given all your names. Good morning and thank you for the forum. My question is cybercrime. If yes, what legislations are in place to curb it? Because many times one country has a functional law while another one has not outlawed it. What strategy is the institutions responsible using to reduce the high rising number of child trafficking within the country? Are those two questions? And lastly, I believe for us to tackle the vice, we need to involve all the stakeholders, starting from citizens through civic education and empowerment. The same thing I was asking about sensitization. You see, we don't know that transnational and organized crime affects me.
Yeah.
Mi nikisikia naona tu power, drug lords,
Yes.
rich
Yes.
people driving big cars, but there is an impact on my life as a citizen. So Chep Kieng Jr. is the one who asked the question. Thanks for your question. So are there legislations in place to curb cybercrime?
Yes, we have what's the name? Computer
Computer
misuse
and
the Cybercrime Act.
But then answer this question. How does cybercrime manifest? How do I know I'm involved in a cybercrime?
Involved?
Yeah, like what?
A victim or an offender?
A victim and an offender. How do you know you are crossing the line?
But the offender
an
will
offender.
know. An offender will know. For example, cybercrime is so vast. Somebody may access your bank account, these apps that we normally have,
Yes.
and gets to steal from you.
Yeah.
That is a cybercrime.
Yeah.
You know, you can also commit other offenses. You can move money. You know, so you cannot say that you do not know how a cybercrime, or you as a victim or a person, that the ignorance of the law is no offense. And there is no way you can say that you did an act on your phone, or you use on your mobile phone or computer that you thought was not an offense.
Yeah.
So for example, if I abuse you, if I use my gadget or my computers to defraud people, to get IDs, to manufacture IDs, to do all those kind of things that are done via internet and computers. You cannot have an excuse that you didn't know that that was an offense.
You see, Anita, there are so many offenses. It may not be related to terrorism, but you can use these gadgets and internet to commit offenses. People make documents. They generate even title deeds, IDs, and in the process, they're using the internet, you know, to create some of these documents, and they make offenses. Data mining is also another area. People can clone your accounts and use it to commit other offenses. When you trace it back, it was not Anita, it was Kiprop.
Yes.
So somehow,
so
you are vulnerable.
Ways of tracing it back.
Yes.
Oh,
we
yeah.
have,
We'll always
go there. So somehow, you will be part of that network where somebody can go to your Facebook account, Twitter account, or your email and mine whatever information is within those accounts and use it elsewhere. So that is cybercrime.
Yeah, so there are legislations in place, right?
Yes.
To curb this.
Yes.
Okay, so he asks, many times one country is a functional law while another one has not outlawed it. Do we have such instances? Have you had such cases where something is outlawed in another country, but here it is, okay, or it's a gray area?
That is it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you see, this calls, it's about, you see, first, there are two things here, Anita, that we need to address. There is something called sovereignty of a nation, so that a nation is able to formulate its own laws and be able to, operate on its own laws. But remember, a country also has obligations internationally to make sure that there is that cooperation and that offenses are not just committed unholy. But again, if, for example, it is an offense here in Kenya to, let's say, use a mobile phone or to just do some kind of an offense, whatever it is in a mobile phone, let's say umenitusi. But in Somalia, it's not an offense. And maybe the person that has done this or the offenses that you've committed using your gadget, the other person or the offender is in maybe Somalia. You are the victim. I mean, there is no way now we can now start talking with Somalia in terms of cooperation, MLA or extradition or sharing of information, because to them it's not an offense. And that is why whenever we are doing MLAs or extradition, there is that mutuality or what do you call it? Reciprocity, right?
Reciprocity.
Or, similarity of offenses. If it's an offense here in Kenya, it should also be an offense in country B. And therefore, we can always interact and deal and help each other. Yes.
Okay. Interesting. So what strategies? So he's asked again about the high rising number of child trafficking within the country. But he says within. Is that within TOC? This child must cross the border. In child trafficking, to what extent is your department involved?
I'm not sure whether he was talking about within the borders of Kenya or across the borders.
He says within the country. So maybe you just speak to it in as far as TOC is concerned.
Can I say, you see, an organized crime, you see, as Mr. Kirpop defined when we were starting this, he said that an organized crime is not actually expressly defined by the Prevention of Organized Crimes Act. But what is defined is organized groups. And organized groups, those groups that come together exist, or groups that involve or entail more than 3 persons and have been in existence for a period of time. UNODC gives it 4 years to commit certain criminal activities, Now, you see, within locally, you can have such kind of a group, like we've seen recently. They steal these kids, or they traffic these kids, either for commercial sex, or for exploitation or child labor, even within. So even that will be an organized crime. It will it will meet the definition of an organized crime.
Oh, I understand.
Yes. And there are also offenses generally against persons. A child is a person, it's a human being. So the act does not say whether you are a child or you are a mature person. So still an offense has been committed.
Yeah, you can have an offense of kidnapping.
Yes.
Okay. And that's happening a lot now for some reason. So he had a lot of questions. Chep Kieng Jr. So he says, I believe for us to tackle the vice, we need to involve all stakeholders starting from the citizens through civic education and empowerment. And you spoke a bit about that,
Yes.
about what you're doing at the coast, especially to de-radicalize.
Yes.
Is that the term?
Yes, it is.
So Jeremiah says, Kiprop, kudos. Kiprop, you're a celeb.
No, that's my friend.
Frank Basten, Rima. Ungetuma salamu, but unasema nini?
I'm not on Facebook. You're not? No.
Oh my, okay. Frank Basten Sirima again says, great stuff, Kiprop. Kipngeno AB is watching, thank you so much. Oliver Tambo Mwaura, again, Kiprop is
Those are
about to run for a position in this country.
Those are prosecutors.
That's aside.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's good.
I think we've had quite an interesting discussion for me. What was key is that TOC affects us as citizens to a very large extent.
Yes.
It's not for the high and mighty, the people who drive big cars around town. And of course, there is the part that corruption plays a very big role.
Yes.
And corruption speaks again to me as a citizen. Again, our value system is definitely in question when you discuss this. This is YouTube. Eddie Kadebe says, enlightening discussion this morning. Thank you. K&K.
Yes.
Karen.
Yeah.
Prop and
You need
I by the way.
an investigative agency like for Derek, K&K. Yeah. So Linda Wawi says, in addition to affecting the economy, citizens can also be affected if they or persons close to them become victims of human trafficking. You see, we didn't know this thing affects us this much.
Yes.
And then Anne Peniga Kumo says, very informative discussion. That was YouTube. Thank you so much, guys, for engaging with us. I know there's so much more on Twitter, but you're out of time.
Yeah.
In as much as you want to keep discussing. This thing is so interesting because it is Godfather of Harlem in real life. Or is it Blacklist?
Blacklist.
Please go and watch Blacklist.
I think I started, but along the way, I don't know.
Yeah? That is now organized crime from a Hollywood perception.
I know.
We need to just anyway. So like I'm saying, we need to come to an end of this discussion. It's not the total closure of the discussion. It goes on the social pages.
Yes.
And like we say, there are experts who are always there to respond. We'll call upon you to respond to some.
Yes,
For
no
those
problem.
difficult ones that you don't even have an answer to.
Yes.
And I want to thank you so much for coming to the program. It's been quite informative, like I'm saying. And let's keep doing this. I don't think it's about to end. It gets better.
It gets better.
With globalization and then cyber and the internet. So thank you so much for all those who have been engaging with us and listening and just getting to understand what transnational organized crime is. And I hope, like me, you've understood that it affects you as a person, as a citizen. And like all other shows we've had here, our value system as a country is always in question. And it goes back to you personally as a person. Personally, what do you think and how do you deal with corruption? Because it is you who works at the border who allows things to go. It is you who's supposed to do some checks for counterfeit and you still let them pass. So, and then we come out and complain about corruption and how we are doing badly as a country, yet we have a responsibility as citizens to really work things out for ourselves. So tujiangalie, like the song says, tujiangalie, tujue ni wapi tunaenda pabaya, and see how we can change the future of our country. There are institutions like the ODPP, they are doing their best, they are the laws, but the big question is, what are you doing as a person, where you are, where you work, and what you do for this country? Thank you so much once again. I want to come to an end of this program. I wish you well in the week. Keep engaging. You'll get the responses you need. And of course, let's meet again next week for yet another interesting discussion, because clearly the criminal justice system for me is quite intriguing and interesting. So keep watching, keep tuned. Have a blessed weekend ahead. God bless you. Thank you.
Bye, viewers. Thank you,
Bye.
Anita.